There's a kind of power this world doesn't talk much and shout. It doesn't boast. It doesn't push to be seen or heard. It waits, it listens. It watches. And when the time is right, it acts not with noise, but with purpose. That power is silence. Too many of us believe that if we're not speaking, if we're not making noise, if we're not constantly explaining or defending ourselves, but then we're losing. But I've come to tell you tonight, that's not true. That's not God's truth. Silence, when chosen with wisdom, is not weakness. It's not fear. It is strength. It is control. It is a sign that something deeper is happening within. You see, anyone can speak in anger. Anyone can react when they're provoked. That's easy. The world is full of quick tempers and quicker tongues. But the man or woman who can stay silent in the storm, who doesn't need to prove themselves every time someone challenges them, that person has discovered something divine. That person has tapped into a strength this world cannot give and it cannot take away. When Jesus stood before his accusers, he could have spoken. He could have argued. He could have called down angels, but he stood in silence. Not because he was powerless. He was full of purpose. His silence wasn't empty. It was full of meaning, full of peace, full of destiny. And sometimes, my friends, that is exactly what we are called to do. To stay quiet, and to trust that the truth in time will speak for itself. Now I know what the world tells you. It says, if you don't speak up, they'll walk all over you. If you don't fight back, you'll be forgotten. But the word says something else. The word says, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. The world teaches hustle and noise. The Spirit teaches stillness and knowing. There's a difference between reacting and responding. And sometimes no response is the most powerful response of all. There's a kind of silence that comes from wisdom. It's not the silence of fear or confusion. It's the silence that says, I don't need to rush, prove it. I don't need to prove I know who I am. And more importantly, I know whose I am. That kind of silence doesn't shrink back. It stands tall. It waits on the Lord. And in the waiting, it grows stronger. You've got to understand there's a time to speak. Yes, a time to cry out, a time to declare truth boldly. But there's also a time to be silent. A time to let the world keep talking while you rest in peace. A time to let your fruit speak louder than your words. The tree doesn't need to make noise to prove it's bearing fruit. People will see it in season. And you, yes, you will be known by what you carry when the time is right. Some of you have been in situations where you want to lash out. You want to defend your name, your integrity, your heart. And there's a time for that. But there's also a time to say nothing and trust that the truth has a way of rising to the surface without your help. There's a time to remember that you don't have to chase every voice that misunderstands you. You don't have to reply to every insult. You don't have to return every fire that's thrown your way. Sometimes silence is the sword. And in that silence, something holy happens. In that quiet, you begin to hear the whisper of God again. You begin to feel him strengthening you, not to shout louder, but to stand taller. And that's what he wants to build in you. Not just a loud voice, but a deep soul. Not just a sharp tongue, but a steady spirit. He wants you strong in the silence, rooted in the stillness, anchored in peace, so that when the storms rage and the critics come and the pressure rises, you're not moved, you're not shaken, and you're strong. Because staying silent doesn't mean nothing's happening. Oh no, something is happening. In the quiet, your faith is growing. Your character is maturing. Your calling is taking shape. You're being prepared. And when it's time, when it's truly time, what needs to be said will be said. What needs to come will come. But it won't come from chaos. It'll come from clarity, from peace, from power. So don't mistake stillness for weakness. Don't confuse silence with surrender. Sometimes the strongest thing you do is nothing at all. Just wait, just breathe, listen. And know deep down that if you stay silent in the right spirit, everything will come naturally. Let the silence speak. We live in a world that never seems to rest. From the moment we rise in the morning to the moment we lay our heads down at night, there's noise. The noise of opinions, distractions, decisions, and temptations, the rush of daily demands, the pressure to respond quickly, to do more, to say more. And in all that noise, it's easy to lose the voice that matters most, the still, small voice of truth. But there is a gift that God gives to those who are willing to wait in the quiet. There's a clarity that comes when we stop running and start listening. When we pause long enough to hear not just the world, but to hear heaven, it's in the stillness, my friends, that clarity is born. You see, when we're always speaking, always reacting, always moving, something happens to our vision. It's clouded, it gets rushed. We begin to act not from wisdom, but from fear. We speak from pressure instead of peace. But when we slow down, when we stay silent, something holy begins to take place inside us. The fog lifts, the confusion starts to fade, and we begin to see not with our natural eyes, but with the eyes of the Spirit. Now, some people say, but preacher, if I stay silent, won't I miss my chance? Won't I fall behind? No, dear one, you won't fall behind when you walk in God's timing. You won't miss your calling when you move in his clarity. The enemy wants to rush you. But the Lord will never pressure you into panic. He invites you into peace, and peace speaks clearly, but only in the quiet. It's just like when a pond is stirred by wind or thrown into jaws by rain. You can't see the bottom. The water is muddy, unclear. But if you wait, if you let the water settle, Eventually it clears. You begin to see what was there all along. That's what happens in silence. The waters of your soul begin to settle, and suddenly the answers you were chasing come into focus. There are some decisions you've been trying to force. Some doors you've been knocking on with all your might. Some prayers you've been praying and wondering, God, where are you? And the answer hasn't come. Not because he's ignoring you, because he's inviting you to step into the stillness. He's saying, come away from the noise. Let me speak to you in the quiet. You don't have to chase clarity. You have to wait for it. And when you do, when you choose silence over striving, you begin to hear with a different kind of ear. You begin to see with a different kind of vision. And the things that once seemed overwhelming begin to make sense, because God is not the author of confusion. He is the giver of clarity, and his voice is clearest in the calm. Some of the greatest mistakes we make are made in haste. We speak too quickly. We act too fast. We move without understanding. And then we wonder how we got off track. But if we had just waited, if we had just stayed silent a little longer, we might have seen the truth before the fall. We might have avoided the hard touch. We might have heard that still voice whispering, not now. Not this, wait on me. I want to tell you tonight that God does not hide direction from his people. He doesn't keep your purpose locked away in mystery. But he does invite you into stillness, because he knows that's where you'll finally be able to hear him clearly. He knows that when all the other voices fade, his voice will rise above them all. And it won't be shouting. It will be gentle. It will be loving. It will be unmistakably him. There's a reason the Psalm says, be still and know that I am God. Because in the stillness, we're reminded that we are not in control, but he is. In the stillness, our striving ends and our trusting begins. In the stillness, we stop asking, what should I do? And we start asking, Lord, what are you doing? And suddenly, we're not pushing. We're not forcing. We're flowing in his time and his wisdom. So if your heart is restless tonight, if your thoughts are noisy and your path unclear, I invite you to do something simple but powerful. Be still, stay silent, and let your soul breathe a answer. Don't rush to chase the sign. Just wait, because when the noise fades and the silence settles, that's when the truth begins to speak. And when it does, see clearly. Not because you fought harder, but because you listened deeper. We spend so much of our lives trying to control things, trying to make sure everything happens on our timetable, according to our plan, in line with our understanding. But if you walk with God long enough, you begin to realize something beautiful, something freeing. That life doesn't always move by our command, but it flows according to a greater wisdom. There's a rhythm to life that's not dictated by pressure or panic. It's governed by divine timing. And when we stop striving, when we stay silent, when we trust the process, everything begins to come. Not all at once, but naturally in season. You see, nature doesn't rush. The trees aren't anxious about when they'll bloom. The rivers don't force their flow. The birds don't wake up worried if the sun will rise. Everything in God's creation trusts his timing. And yet his children often struggle the most with waiting. And we want to see the full picture before we take the first step. We want the answer before we even ask the right question. But the truth is, God doesn't always give us the whole path. He gives us enough light for the next step. And then he says, walk with me. Trusting the natural flow of life doesn't mean we're passive. It doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. No, it means we do what we can, and then we rest in what God will do. It means we sow in faith, water in patience, and wait in peace, knowing that the harvest will come. But it will come in his time, not ours. The problem is we live in an instant world. Everything is fast: messages, meals, decisions, results. We've grown impatient with the process, but the Spirit doesn't operate on the world's schedule. God takes his time, because he's not just preparing what you're asking for. He's preparing you to receive it. And if you receive something too soon, it can break you. But if it comes in season, the silence after the stillness, it becomes a blessing that builds, not a weight that crushes. Some of you are waiting right now. You've been praying, believing, hoping, but nothing seems to be changing. And maybe the silence has made you think God has forgotten. But I want to remind you tonight, delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. Sometimes the silence is the sacred space where God is doing his deepest work. You can't see it yet, but he's setting things in order. Aligning people, opening doors, closing others. He's not late. He's just moving at the speed of your growth. When we trust the flow of his timing, peace becomes our companion. We no longer feel the need to fight for what's already ours in Christ. We stop comparing our journey to others, because we know what's meant for us won't miss us. You don't have to manipulate it. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to force anything into your life. When your heart is right and your hands are open, what belongs to you will come. And it will come naturally. I met people who chased after every opportunity, every relationship, every open door, only to feel more exhausted and more empty. Why? Because they were living out of fear, not faith. But I've also seen those who waited quietly, worked faithfully, and trusted deeply. And in time, what they needed found them. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was the fruit of trust, the reward of obedience, the result of letting go and letting God lead. There's a peace that settles in your soul when you finally trying to write every chapter of your life with your own hand. When you give the pen to God and say, Lord, I trust you with the pace and the path. You no longer have to panic. You no longer have to prove yourself. You simply walk step by step, trusting that even the pauses have purpose. Sometimes we think the silence, nothing is happening. But in truth, that's often when the most is happening, just not in the way we expect. God is working the roots before he reveals the fruit. He's shaping your character before he opens the next chapter. And the more you trust him, the more you begin to see that his timing is perfect, always. So if you're in a season where things feel slow, if you're wondering when the answer will come or when the door will open, let me tell you this, don't rush it. Don't force it. Don't speak just to fill the quiet. Stay still. Stay silent. And let the rhythm of grace carry you, because when you trust the flow, everything that's meant to be will come. Naturally, there's a lesson the Spirit teaches us, one that this world will never understand. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response. We live in an age where everyone feels they must have the last word, the loudest voice, the sharpest reply. We've been taught that if someone speaks against us, we must speak louder. If we're offended, we must retaliate. If we're misunderstood, we must explain ourselves until we are heard. But my dear friends, that is not the way of the Spirit. That is not the way of peace. God never called us to be reactive. He called us to be rooted. And when you're rooted in him, you don't have to respond to every voice that calls your name. You don't have to answer every accusation. You don't have to run around trying to fix every false perception. Because when your heart is anchored in truth, you don't need proof, you just need to live it. There's a difference between reaction and response. Reaction is fast, emotional, and often unwise. It's the heat of the moment, the desire to strike back, to make ourselves feel in control. But response, that comes from a deeper place. Response requires stillness. It requires wisdom. And sometimes the response the Lord gives us isn't a word at all, but silence. You see, silence isn't always passive. Sometimes it's the most active choice you can make. It says, I won't lower myself to that level. I won't waste my strength on things that don't matter. I won't trade my peace for a fleeting victory in an argument. It takes strength to speak, but it takes even more strength to hold your tongue when everything in you wants to shout. That, my friend, is a sign of maturity. That is the fruit of the Spirit at work within you. Jesus, the very Son of God, stood before his accusers and said nothing. He had all power, all truth, all authority, yet he remained silent. Why? Because he didn't need to react to their ignorance. He didn't need to answer their insults. He knew that truth would outlive every lie. He knew that his purpose was greater than their noise. And you need to remember the same. Your purpose is greater than the noise around you. Some of us are tired, not because of the weight we carry, but because the words we're always trying to defend ourselves against. We're weary, not from doing good, but from trying to respond to every misunderstanding, every critique, and every accusation that comes our way. And I'm here to tell you tonight, you don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to prove yourself to everyone. Sometimes silence is the shield that guards your peace. There are battles not worth fighting. There are words not worth answering. Not because you're afraid, because you're focused. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise. The enemy would love nothing more than to get you distracted by arguments that don't matter. He'd love to pull you into petty conflicts that steal your time, your energy, and your joy. But God is calling you to higher grounds, you to rise above it, to be silent when the world demands your reaction, to trust that he is your defender, your vindicator, your voice when the time is right. You don't need to react to everything when you know who you are in Christ. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone when you know that God sees. God knows, and God will make all things plain in time. And yes, there will be moments when the Spirit prompts you to speak. There will be times when truth must be declared. But you'll know the difference, because that kind of speaking comes not from anger, but from grace. Not from pride, but from purpose. Let me tell you, there's a deep peace that settles on the soul that learns this way of living. When you no longer feel the need to control every outcome, when you can stay quiet and trust God to work behind the scenes, you walk differently. You sleep better. You love deeper, because your energy isn't wasted on proving yourself. It's invested in becoming who God has called you to be. So if you're in a situation right now where you're tempted to speak out just to be heard and just to win the moment, I invite you to pause. Ask yourself, is this reaction worth the cost of my peace? And if the answer is no, then let silence speak for you. Trust that your character will speak louder over time than your words can in a moment. Trust that the God who sees in secret will reward you openly. And trust that in your quiet, he is working. Because sometimes to be into the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And there's a truth written deep into the way God designed this life. What you carry inside will always attract what surrounds you. Not because you chase it, not because you fight for it, because of who you are becoming when no one is looking, when no one is clapping, when the world is quiet. It's not the loud ones who are always the strongest. It's the quiet soul who knows where their peace comes from. The one who doesn't need to run after blessings, because they know blessings come to those who wait in faith. You don't have to chase what's already yours in the Spirit. You don't have to beg for what God has promised you. And you surely don't have to strive to be seen by people when you are already known by heaven. Sometimes we spend all our strength trying to open doors God never told us to knock on, thinking we must perform, prove, or persuade our way into purpose. But what if I told you that when your heart is at peace, when your spirit is still, when your life is aligned with God, what you need will begin to find its way to you? There's something powerful that happens when you no longer run after things from a place of fear. When you stop saying, what if I miss it? And start saying, if it's mine, it will come. That's not laziness. That's not passivity. That's trust. And trust is the language of heaven. The Father is not drawn to striving. He's drawn to faith. He's not moved by desperation. He's moved by surrender. When your heart is quiet and your motives are pure, the right people come, the right opportunities arrive, the right doors open, not by force, but by favor. And favor doesn't shout. Favor doesn't compete. Favor walks humbly, knowing that what God has assigned cannot be stolen, delayed, or destroyed. But to receive that kind of favor, you must first be willing to rest in the silence, to sit with yourself and with your God long enough to be changed from the inside out. I know we've all been tempted to chase. We've all had seasons where we looked around and thought we had to catch up. We've all seen someone else receive the thing we were praying for and wondered if we missed our moment. But hear me tonight, you have not missed what is meant for you. You are not forgotten. If you are walking with the Lord, even when it feels like nothing is happening, He is moving. He is shaping. He is preparing. And sometimes the greatest thing He's doing up is in you. This world teaches us to be loud, to hustle, to advertise ourselves. But God says, be still, be faithful, be rooted. Because when your roots are deep in Him, the fruit will come in season. And that fruit will attract what was always meant to find you. The peace you carry will draw people who are tired of noise. Being the joy you walk in will become a light for those stumbling in the dark. The love you give, even quietly, will begin to shift the atmosphere around you. And suddenly you realize you didn't have to strive. You didn't have to chase. You just had to stay close to Him. Some of you have been running from disappointment, running after recognition, running out of fear that if you don't make it happen, it won't happen. But I believe the Spirit is calling you to stop, to breathe, to trust again. You're not behind schedule. You're not less than. You're not invisible. You're in process. And if you'll stay in that secret place with Him, if you'll build your life on the quiet things, the holy things, then everything that's meant for you will come. And it will come naturally. Because the truth is, peace attracts peace. Wholeness attracts wholeness. Purpose attracts purpose. And when you walk with God, you carry those things with you. You're not chasing after provision anymore. Provision is following you. You're not desperate for love. Love flows from you. You're not trying to force success. Success begins to take shape around the life of obedience and stillness. That's the way of the kingdom. It doesn't move like the world moves. It's not loud, not anxious, not in a hurry. It flows from a quiet strength. It comes through silent trust. Everything has to be and when you finally go to need to force it, everything that was meant to big will come. There's something sacred about silence. In a world addicted to noise, silence has become rare, even uncomfortable. We fill every quiet moment with distraction. We scroll, we talk, we busy ourselves just so we don't have to sit in stillness. But I want to tell you tonight, it's in those quiet moments that wisdom begins to rise. It's in the silence that the voice of God becomes clear. It's not that He isn't speaking all the time. It's that we're often too loud inside to hear Him. You don't have to be alone to be silent. Silence is not just the absence of noise around you. It's the stillness within you. It's the heart that's not rushing to be right. It's the soul that isn't grasping for attention. It's the spirit that says, I don't need to speak to be seen. I don't need to shout to be heard. I just need to be still and listen. And there's wisdom that cannot be found in books, cannot be taught in classrooms, cannot be shouted from pulpits. There's a kind of knowing that only comes when you quiet your heart and wait on God. It doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen in a rush. It happens in the slow, steady moments where your soul sits before the Lord like a child saying, speak, Father, I'm listening. We all think that action is what moves us forward. And yes, faith without works is dead. But there's a deeper truth, and without wisdom, action becomes noise. Without reflection, movement becomes misdirection. And with true wisdom, can we stop speaking long enough to hear what heaven is saying? Do you know why so many people are running in circles, never really growing? It's not because they aren't trying hard enough. It's because they're not stopping long enough. And they're not allowing the silence to teach them. They fill every space with activity, but activity without insight leads to exhaustion, not growth. The greatest growth doesn't always happen when we're doing something. It often happens when we're doing nothing except listening. God speaks in whispers, not shouts. And whispers require stillness. That's why the Bible says, in quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Because there is strength in silence. Not the kind the world celebrates. Not the kind that's flashy, but the kind that's deep and real and unshakable. I've sat with people who've walked through unspeakable pain, and the ones who carry peace, the ones who've come through the fire and still shine with grace, are the ones who learn to be silent in the storm. They didn't fight every battle with words. And they didn't explain their way through suffering. They learned to listen, to wait, to let God do the deep work in their souls while they said nothing at all. And in that silence, they found something most people miss: wisdom. That's what silence gives you. It gives you the space to grow, to reflect, to become. And over time, it shapes you. It teaches you to speak less but say more. It teaches you to react less and love more. It teaches you to let go of being right and hold on to being whole. The longer you walk with God in silence, the more you become like Him. Not loud, not hurried, not anxious, but full of grace and truth. Some of you are in a season right now where God is not saying much. It feels quiet, it feels still. And maybe you've mistaken that for absence. But I want to tell you, God is never more present than when He is preparing you in silence. That quiet place, that lonely road, that still season, that's where roots grow deep. That's where wisdom is planted. That's where you learn what truly matters. And when you come out of that season, you'll find that you don't need to shoot your worth. You'll carry it. You won't need to prove your growth. It will speak through your presence, because silence doesn't just teach you how to listen to God. It teaches you how to live like Him, not striving, not chasing, not reacting, just steady, just strong, just full of the kind of peace this world can't manufacture, can't take away. So if the season is quiet, let it be quiet. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't run from it. Sit in it, lean into it, listen in it, because in that silence, God is shaping you. He's not withholding wisdom. He's preparing your heart to carry it. And in due time, what He's planted in silence will bear fruit in strength. Let the silence grow you.